Good morning, good afternoon, and or good evening. You are watching Nub's Handheld Collection, a YouTube series dedicated to the cataloging and review of every one of my handheld games. As always, I am your host, Victor Nub, and today we're going to be taking a look at Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Fall of the Foot Clan. Developed by Konami, published by Konami under their Ultra Games branch, and released in the United States in August of 1990. Fall of the Foot Clan was the first TMNT game to be released on the Game Boy, followed in short order by TMNT 2, Back from the Sewers in 1991, and TMNT 3, Radical Rescue in 1993. Fall of the Foot Clan is a side-scrolling platformer in which players must guide one of the turtles through 5 levels to defeat Shredder and Krang, and eventually rescue their friend April O'Neil. You know, that wildly original storyline that hasn't been done 1,000 times already. Much like the first TMNT title released on the NES, if a player loses all of the health for one of their turtles, he is captured and they must use another turtle to continue the journey. If all 4 turtles are captured, the game is over. I do not know if there are any continues, however, you can select the level that you start on if you want to cheese the experience. I have no sales or critical scores, probably because it's a Game Boy game based on a licensed IP. However, the game clearly sold well enough for Konami to produce a sequel, and the game frequently appears on lists of the top 50 Game Boy games of all time, for what that's worth. That's all the notes that I had. Yeah, not a lot to go on. Let's go ahead and get it started. Alright. Yeah, see, you can just pick the level right off the bat. One thing that I do like is, and I noticed this was the default, they actually had it set up so that A was the attack and B was jump. That is awful. Who would do that? You gotta have the attack on B and the jump on A, because you can do both at the same time comfortably if the attack button is further away from the, the knuckle joint of your thumb. At least that's my feeling on the matter. Which of these characters should you use? I don't know if there is a better option for any of them. I think they all have the exact same range, so it really doesn't matter. It's just personal preference. My choice, always whenever I played the original NES versions of the TMNT games, was go with characters with longer reach, like Leonardo or Donatello. They also tended to have higher damage with their weapons. Again, don't know if it matters. We'll go with Leonardo to start. If I lose one of the turtles, obviously we'll progress from there. I usually go Leo, then Donnie, then Michelangelo and Raphael last, because his weapon has always seemed like it's the least useful of the weapons, but again, personal preference. Here we go. All right, you have the theme song. That's always a good start. Oh, I like that. You can throw ninja stars basically as much as you want. Another hallmark of the TMNT games, at least as far as the arcade game, is that you can break objects in the environment and use them as projectiles against the enemy. Don't think there's any secret areas, but I don't remember. This is one of the Game Boy games that I had growing up. We've talked about this before in previous episodes of Nub's Handheld Collection. For some reason, my parents bought me and the younger of my 2 sisters handhelds for Christmas one year, because we were going to be going on the road to visit family for Christmas, and they wanted something to shut us up. And they gave me a Game Gear and my sister a Game Boy. And for some reason, they bought games for me for the Game Boy, even though I didn't have that handheld. Best guess is they knew. My sister wasn't going to probably play the Game Boy very much, and I'd end up getting it at some point. So this is a game that they gave me for a system that I didn't actually own. The irony, of course, being they never bought her any games for the Game Gear, so they kind of screwed her over at my expense. Whatever. All I have to do is say, hey, Angela, what'd you do with your Game Boy? And she won't be able to answer the question. She doesn't know. All right. I can change direction and attack reasonably fast enough, and that is very important if you have enemies coming from both directions. The ninja stars, I'm not seeing any way to throw them other than to duck and press attack. I'm guessing there isn't another way to do it! Oh, God! Can't be a Konami game if they don't have bats in some way. And bats that are a pain in the ass to kill. Oh, gotcha. Whee! Now, we've talked in the past, I'm sure 2 or 3 times, because we've played at least 3 TMNT games on the channel at this point, about my history with TMNT and the idea that it was the show for kids that were, born around the time I was born. I was born in 81. The show first started coming on television in 87, so I would have been about 6 when it hit. And it was just an absolute media juggernaut. It took over... Oh, damn. I guess I gotta jump them. It absolutely took over, like, pop culture for kids at that point in time. If you were talking about anything that entertained kids in the late 80s, early 90s, you were talking about TMNT. I remember watching the show, and in fact, I got a couple of tapes of the episodes on VHS. Yes, that's right. Back when tapes were the way you watch TV shows. Ah! You brought them home. And I remember watching the show up to a certain point, at which point I guess I either got bored or it was harder to find on TV, because it was, at one point, syndicated and on, like, 124 radio stations, or television stations, rather. And I guess at some point the shine kind of fell off the franchise, and they stopped showing it on as many channels. So I wasn't aware of this, and I'm sure there's people who were diehard fans and knew this was the case. The TV show obviously was a pretty big departure from the original comic book, which was a much darker source. It wasn't light and comedic, and the characters weren't basically prohibited from using their weapons offensively as they were on the TV show. Funny detail about the cartoon show. At one point, because there was a lot of backlash for the weapon use on the TV show, they actually took away Michelangelo's weapons and made it so that he fought using a grappling hook. As dumb as that is. He wouldn't actually hit enemies with it. He'd just use it to move around, I guess. But at some point, I'm guessing it was a result of the fact that the primary audience was expected to have been aging up at some point, they actually gave the show a much darker tone in the last 3 seasons, 8, 9, and 10. I don't remember this. I don't remember much about the show other than the first couple of seasons were shows that I definitely watched, but I couldn't tell you specific episodes. But they just bit my tongue. They decided at some point that they were going to make the show a lot more heavy and less funny. So what happened was the characters stopped telling jokes as much. The environment gained this ominous dark orange reddish hue, kind of like Batman, the animated series. Almost certainly influenced by that, I would add. That would have been right around the time that show started coming out. And the characters actually had, like, some kind of progression in what was going on, or at least not the heroes. They didn't have a ton that they could have progressed with. But Shredder and Krang, specifically, who were obviously based out of the Technodrome and trying to conquer the planet, I think in season 7 or 8, they actually got banished to Dimension X, which is where Krang came from originally. And I believe, if it wasn't that season, it was one of the last 2. The main bad guy that the Turtles were facing wasn't even Shredder. It was another guy. I don't remember his name off the top of my head. Which is such a weird idea. I get it. You want something for kids to go out and buy, and if they've bought Shredder 2, 3, 4, 5 times, they're not going to buy another figure. So why wouldn't they... Oh, there we go. Why wouldn't they decide to introduce a new character? Oh. Oh, whoa! Oh, boy. Okay. Careful. I think I got this. Just need to... No! Oh, I can block the bullets! Now that's an idea I like! Don't like that, though. Got him! Woo! But they basically made it so that there was a completely different bad guy, and his motivation wasn't even about defeating the Turtles so much as discrediting them. making the public turn against them. Yeah, something about April. And I think Shredder and Krang came back at some point. We'll switch it up. We'll do Donatello. They came back to Earth at some point, but again, they weren't the primary focus. It was still whatever this new bad guy was. And I do remember that, or at least I've read, that at some point they defeat this final bad guy in the conclusion of the series and say, all right, well, you've learned all that you can. I'm no longer, Splinter said this, I'm no longer your teacher, I am now your equal, or something of that to that effect. Which is conclusion. I mean, that's not something that a lot of cartoons actually got the opportunity to do, because more often than not, the show would either be canceled before they got a proper conclusion, or they just never had one planned, because usually these serialized shows don't actually have a story that advances in any way. It's just like an episode of the week type affair. So I found it interesting that they had actually given enough thought to this show to give it an actual progressing story that reached a conclusion of sorts by the end of the series. Now, of course, that is the original run. They've done, I don't know, 3 or 4 new series based on TMNT at some point in the past. So when I talk about the characters, if you're younger than me, you probably remember one of the other shows and not necessarily the original one that came on in the late 80s. So I can't say whether or not they kept the idea of an actual progressing storyline in future episodes of the new runs of the characters, or if it was back to the kind of episode of the week. Nothing's changing. They're always good. No one ever gets hurt or dies or disappears forever type stuff. I'm happy that they did that. Will it make me go back and watch the old cartoon? Absolutely not. I don't know if I have the same love for the characters or the franchise that I would have had when I was a kid. I don't think I've watched any of the new shows, and I definitely haven't seen any of the movies, not even the live action ones that came out, whatever it was, 6-7 years ago. This is one of those franchises that, in my mind, just didn't age well, and like, it's not something that I feel a need to see as an adult. Then again, I also feel the same way about Transformers, and Transformers was made into a big budget, franchise of movies that, oh god, I missed the pizza! Oh, no. I didn't miss it that time, baby. Okay, that was dumb. I shorted the jump. They're getting aggressive. Uh-oh. Yep. Yeah, what I would say is my go-tos, the ones that I remember watching, like, a ton of when I was a kid, would have been TMNT was one of them, obviously. The other one would have been the original run of Transformers, and then the third, I remember watching a lot of DuckTales when it was on. I don't know if I watched the original episodes or if I watched it in syndication. Yes, I just smacked the mic by accident. But I do remember watching DuckTales. I even remember a good chunk of the first, like, it was, I guess, a teaser movie of the series where what's his name? Scrooge is after some treasure in, I want to say it was like the Incan ruins or something like that. Ah, crap. How far back do I get pushed? Because they used a lot of that. Oh, good. Okay. Oh, ow. Gotcha. Nope, missed that one. Damn. Jump! Gotcha. Gotcha! I'm glad you can kick him without taking damage. The game just glitched out. Awesome. Hope that doesn't affect my ability to finish this. Yeah, they had, like, scenes from the movie as part of the intro for the TV show, which was always a wild idea. I don't know if there's a way to actually watch them other than maybe you can go on Disney Plus and you can see the original show. TMNT, I would guess, is a Paramount property, so you could probably watch the original show there. And also, shows that old, more often than not, I would guess if you actually go back and watch, like on YouTube, you can see the original shows. G.I. Joe would be a good example. I think you can actually go and watch the original cartoon series on YouTube basically for free. I mean, yeah, you might have to watch some ads while it's playing, but you can see the entire run of the show. Such as the nature of certain older properties that maybe don't have the same fanfare or love that a show kind of like DuckTales or a TMNT would have. Transformers, I have no idea who owns the rights to that, and I have no idea if you can go on like anywhere and see original episodes of that. I remember seeing the movie for the Transformers, the cartoon that came out late 80s. And at that point, you know, I was a huge fan of the show, and they're doing a cartoon movie based on what I had remembered watching for so long. Absolutely, I wanted to go see it. And it was the biggest letdown of a movie or a TV show that I remember ever seeing. Which is saying a lot, because the third TMNT movie, the live-action one, was absolute dog crap. And I still enjoyed it for what it was. But the Transformers movie, someone at Hasbro decided that they wanted to start selling new toys. And the best way to do that is to introduce new characters. And the best way to do that in their minds would be to get rid of the old characters. So if you've never seen it, spoilers, in the Transformers cartoon movie that came out in the 80s, both Megatron and Optimus Prime die. And then they bring in this total wiener who's going to take over the leadership role that no one cares about, called Hot Rodimus, and he becomes Prime. And I just remember, I don't remember if it was crying, because obviously I would have been a kid around that time, and you know, seeing a character that you love die is always a hard thing. I remember not liking the movie after that happened at all. I would not be surprised if I cried, mainly because I was upset that the movie wasn't going to feature the character I cared about. Oh, ow! This is going to be a tough fight to win. He's going spread shot. Oh, damn it. Got him. But yeah, that was one of those shows that I think absolutely shot itself in the foot, because some greedy executive said, we can't sell Optimus Prime and Megatron anymore. No one cares about them. Let's bring in a whole new generation of characters. And then the movie bombed so bad they had to, like, backtrack. Now, of course, at some point, they did introduce new gens of characters, either in the comic books or as individual properties that they brought out for new content. For example, Beast Wars. I don't know if the Dinobots inspired that, or if that was like something that had popped up in the comics first, but those were characters that obviously kind of spun off and had their own fanship. I don't know if I would have watched that, even though I was a big dinosaur fan. I remember the show, seeing some clips of it, and it looked like absolute dog water. It was not a good-looking show, but, you know, I'm sure there were kids out there who remember that fondly. The only other cartoon show that we will probably never get a really good chance to talk about, because I don't know if there were any games for it. If there are, I might go find it. Mighty Max. Mighty Max was, I want to say, the boys' equivalent for Polly Pocket. It was a little tiny figure that had its own action sets and characters and stuff, and for whatever reason, they decided to make a TV show for it. And I remember thinking that was a fantastic show. That was one that came on probably when I was in high school, and it would always be on TV right around the time I was getting ready to go to class. So it was like, I'm already awake, I got 15 minutes, it's on, why don't we watch it? And I gotta say, it may just be nostalgia. I remember that show being fantastic for a kid's show. And they did an awesome thing. One of the few times where I think a TV show had a proper ending, or at least a cartoon show based around, you know, property for kids, had an ending that was absolutely well thought out and masterfully pulled off. Where basically The final conflict between the bad guys and the heroes takes place, and they decide that they're going to let the hero sidekicks, there was like an owl and a big dude with a sword named Norman, if I'm remembering correctly, they were going to let them die. And the way that they did that was, I think the owl just straight up got killed. The hero guy with the sword, like they were being attacked by a group of enemies that were going to become relentless, and he said, Max, run, I'll take care of these guys, and he gets left behind to his doom. And Mighty Max, the character, I guess his special ability is he has a hat that allows him to travel to other dimensions, finds out that there's a way to use the hat to basically go back in time and relive the entire series with the knowledge of what was going to happen. So basically, the show ends by the character going back to the beginning of the series so that he can go through it all over again. As stupid and cheesy as that is, I think it's actually a brilliant idea. Does it change any context in the actual show? No, it doesn't. Do I still think it was a good idea to end it that way? Yes, I do. I think it was probably the best way they could have ended the show, because it wasn't like there was, again, with a kid's TV show, a whole lot of like deep, meaningful character progression. It was mostly just episode of the week's type fare. But you give an ending to a show like that, and basically you're saying, here's how we keep the show from seeming like it was a waste of time and nothing ever changed for the characters. I get it. There are probably people who would be like, it's kind of hand-wavy BS, like where someone wakes up from a dream and says, oh, it was all just a dream, and then goes back to doing absolutely nothing of substance except episode of the week type fodder. I'm surviving, but I'm not finding a lot of pizza, and that's not good. I don't want to lose my my guy before we get to the boss. Oh, God. Hey, got some health. Not much. Oh, no, you don't. Disappointing. I don't think I'm getting any extra lives. Whoa, Shredder! Oh, damn. Oh! Oh! Oh, I'm dead. Oh, boy, what am I supposed to do there? Maybe duck? All right. I can do a save state, right? Yeah. We're using my Retron because we're looking at a Game Boy game. That's why it's, okay. Let's do stars. Nope. Oh! Maybe that's it. Nope. You gotta jump out of the way. Just in time. Uh-oh. Not sure what to do there. Yeah, just hit and walk away. Ah, damn. Couldn't. Alright, we got this. Not so hard. Gotcha! Sit on it, Shredder! Oh! If I could do a spin move, I would right now. I guess I could jump. That is technically a spin move. I think Raphael's the weakest of the characters to use in any TMNT video games. The irony is, I thought he was the best character because he was the snarkiest. Except in future versions where they made him just kind of like a bitter ass. We'll do Michelangelo. Why not? I believe this is the last level. It was only 5, right? So we're basically done. Well, okay. Oh, God damn it. Go. Got it. Oh! Oh, boy. Tough level. We may not beat the game today. I'm not too worried about that. Damn it! Boy, I hope one of these robot enemies, which of course we've probably talked about that in the past, Another change for the cartoon series was the fact that the Foot Clan was actually human beings in the comic book, and they changed it to robots so that they weren't beating up human beings. Again, the dumb mental hurdles that TV executives go through to make it so that their TV show is not a bad influence. Grappling hook for Michelangelo, stupid turn all the humanoid ninjas into robots so that they're not hitting anyone that could be physically hurt and bleed. That's the kind of dumb crap you're talking about. I'm dead. Yeah, I don't think we're going to finish this one. It's all right. Not a big deal. We'll get as far as we can, and then we'll go ahead and call it an episode. Ow! Got shorted. Go. Jump! Damn it. Quit touching me. I'm glad there is a hitbox above the character's head, so if an enemy drops basically straight on top of you, you're not getting screwed. Hup. Alright, we're doing alright. We're doing alright. Could use some pizza. That is just a mantra that I live by, man. I could use some pizza. Doesn't matter if I'm 10 or 50, I'm still gonna say I could use some pizza. This game, the jump kick, not quite as definitive a weapon as... Oh, there we go. It is in, like, the NES games. I mean, it's the de facto way to fight most enemies in TMNT 2. I'd say 3, maybe not as much. And in the original game, you couldn't do a jump kick at all. It was usually just using your weapon when you jumped. Interesting. I guess I should be jump kicking those guys because it's taking one hit to kill them. Okay, I don't know what that is. Oh, pizza. Pizza! That's what I'm like with it in real life, too. I see pizza anywhere. It's like, oh, pizza! Pizza! Get out of here. Oh, God! Now they're going to make one that will literally be 3 levels tall and you can't jump it. Okay! Get out of here. Get. Why am I being attacked by sentient fireballs? This isn't even the first time they've come and attacked me. There were some in that one, like, sewer level. Tell you, the mutagen that apparently affected the turtles has some incredible properties. It just turns anything into a living being. Uh-oh. Oh, gotcha. Get out of here. Oh, I tried to kill it. Gotcha. Again, I know I owned this game, but I, for the life of me, don't think I ever beat it, which is weird. Damn. I was on a hot streak, and then I had to take one hit. Nope, now you know. So I know that there were some people who were probably really looking forward to the last Ronin. Oh, let's save here, so we can try to beat the game today. I know there were some people out there who were looking forward to the last Ronin, and the fact that it got canceled is kind of a bummer. I just don't know if it was going to have the kind of draw, because obviously this was always, at least once it moved to movies and TV shows, looked at as a kid's property. If it was going to have the same kind of interest and ticket sales that Paramount, whoever it is that owns it, were hoping they would get. And that is almost certainly why they canceled it. Will they revisit that in the future when things are a little bit more stable in theaters or in home viewing, because the theaters are going the way of the dodo? That's just the fact. Eventually, people won't be going to theaters to see a brand new release. They'll just see it at home for whatever the ridiculous one-time price is before they allow people to, like, own a copy of it. Is it disappointing? Yes. I don't think that means we'll never see a Last Ronin. And if you're not familiar, it's basically the idea that Michelangelo's the last surviving turtle in a grim future where he has to go fight someone. I don't remember who it is. And he carries with him basically all the weapons of his fallen brothers. I think Splinter in that future is also dead. Don't know about April O'Neil. But he goes from kind of the fun-loving party dude to like this grim, dark character because he's experienced so much loss in his life. I do think there is fertile ground for a movie based on that property. But again, you're talking about a franchise that's aimed at kids, and that is almost certainly what is guiding their decision to cancel it at this time. Oh, damn! He jump kicked me. I don't remember him walking around with his arms up like that. Am I missing something? Game over? I think I just beat the game. Again, I don't remember ever beating this game before. I don't know if it was just I didn't like it or I just wasn't very good. I will say, one of the things that is lost about watching a Game Boy game on a TV screen where the refresh rate is awesome is the original Game Boy was guilty of having a lot of ghosting when objects would move around on the screen. Which means that if you had characters jumping in from off screen like foot soldiers, yeah, it was probably really hard to see them before they would hit you. It is what it is. Hooray! I blew up the Technodrome and saved the world. Oh, epilogue. Let's see how everything turned out. Freaked the Foots, mangled the Mousers, and totaled the Technodrome. That's Cowabunga? Turtle power. Oh, okay. But what about the Shredder? And Krang? No, I killed both of them. They're dead. Turned to toast? Vaporized to milkshake? Why would they turn to milkshake? They're not cows or milk. Or escape to Dimension X. Until we know, none of us can sleep safely in our beds. Shells? Goo! How would they fit in their shells? Their limbs are long and meaty. There's no way they could fit completely in their shells. It's not some pocket dimension where an infinite amount of goods or meat can hang out. That's something that never made sense about the design of the turtles, is their shells are too small. They would not be able to pull inside of them. Oh, look at our heroes. In black and white, so unless you see the weapons, you have no idea which ones you're looking at. All right, well, there you go. We managed to beat TMNT Fall of the Foot Clan. We actually made the Foot Clan fall in this case. And apparently Naoki Matsui did all the work. All right, let's go ahead and do the review phase. Let's do a round of the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is, at least with a game that is as sparse as this one is, the response time for your character's actions is razor sharp. I mean, you can press left and do an attack, and the character turns and does the attack really fast, which means all the enemies that kind of jump in off screen to land basically where you're standing, you can turn and hit them as long as you got fast enough reflexes without them making contact and doing damage to you. I think that is absolutely critical for a game that is so heavily dependent on you surviving through one long corridor of nonstop enemies jumping in to attack you. So they got that absolutely right. The characters are large and detailed. You can tell that you're playing as a turtle when you look at the character on screen. The Foot Clan soldiers are very clearly, members of the Foot. The Mousers are big and detailed. The whatever the lasso guys are, I know They are from like the comics or the TV shows. I can't remember what their names are. They're very clearly identifiable. The enemies that we fought Rocksteady, Bebop, Shredder, Krang. They all looked just like you remember them. So on a very small, low pixel count console like the Game Boy, they made the characters large and detailed enough that you could tell who they were, which is absolutely great. The music was very reminiscent of the TV show. They got the original theme song, and it was fine. It wasn't chirpy. It wasn't annoying to listen to. So I'll go ahead and include that in the bad. Don't know if it was necessarily great, but I wouldn't say it was terrible. I do like that they gave you a stock of ninja stars, or an unlimited stock of ninja stars. So if you crouched, you could throw them and hit enemies at a distance. How far away were the enemies going to be that you would be able to hit them with those? Not very far at all. And I do think that it was a smart call to take these projectile weapons that you had and make them not damage boss characters, so you couldn't just hide from them. You had to actually get in and attack. I like that the jump kick, which is kind of not exactly like it doesn't perform the way that jump kicks did in like the NES. You jump and then you just kind of stick your foot out. I like that they do more damage. I think that was a smart call, because if you have an enemy that can take more than one hit point of damage, for example, the lassoing dudes, the rolly lasso guys, whatever the hell they're called, if you just did standard melee attacks, it took 2 hits to kill them. If you managed to land a jump kick, it was a 1-hit kill. I hit the mic again, damn it. So I think that was a smart idea. Also, not necessarily game breaking, but again, the default setting for the buttons was B and A, and they let you change that in game. Very good call there. I don't think it would have been nearly as fun or as easy to play if they had it the other way around. You always want jump on A and have the attack, the melee weapon, on B, so that you have the jump closest to where your thumb's going to respond, if I'm making sense. I don't think it would have been good the other way around. Another smart call, they allow you to pick any stage. So if you manage to die at some point, you can actually jump into the last stage if you want and play from there with all 4 of the turtles. Now, we managed to make it through without losing all the turtles. I did have to save scum one fight trying to figure out what I needed to do. It was with Shredder, and it actually was a fairly easy fight once you figure it out. Hit him, walk away. Hit him, walk away. Very easy to figure out. As far as the bad, again, we can't tell because we're playing the game on an emulation device that turns the screen to black and white and doesn't see the same problems that you would have had on the Game Boy. But a lot of what made this game very difficult when I originally played it was the Game Boy had a very big problem, the original run of the Game Boy, with the green screen with different colors, different shades of olive green. It had a very serious problem with ghosting, which meant you'd be walking along and a foot soldier would just kind of blurry, fall onto the screen in a very blurry mess. And you might see it in time or you might not see it in time, which meant you would take more damage playing on the original Game Boy than you would have on this console, where I can very clearly see someone's jumping on screen and I would have to respond to them. So a fault of the Game Boy hardware itself, but also there was an awful lot of enemies that would jump onto the screen and their path for landing would literally guide them directly on top of your character. I don't love that. The good news is, and we can put this in the good when I'm putting up the list on screen, is that the hitbox for your melee attack actually covers the top of your head. So if the enemy's coming in from off screen by jumping on top of you, and you swing your melee weapon from a standard standing position, it would still hit them, and more often than not, kill them. So they did account for that. I just wish the foot soldiers didn't always jump on screen like that. I wish they would have just walked on in some cases. There's not a ton of variety in the enemies or what they do in this game. You see foot soldiers, Foot Clan, whatever you want to call them, mousers, the flying drones, I don't remember what they're called, and like some random garbage that flies at you, barrels or fireballs or whatever, and that's it. And they didn't even give the Foot Clan like different gimmicks. One of the things that made the second game that came out, the arcade game, so memorable is the fact that, yes, you're fighting basically nothing but foot soldiers, but they had different kinds. They had different weapons. They did different things when they came on screen. They did a great job of that in the third game as well, the Manhattan Project, where they would have enemies that would just kind of walk in and try to attack you by punching you or kicking you, but they also had some that would try to jump kick. They had some that would throw weapons, like boomerangs or whatever. They had some that had shurikens they would throw. Some that would wait until someone got behind you and then move in to attack, so you were getting pincered, basically. You had none of that here. You had, like, enemies that jumped in off screen to attack from above. Mousers that kind of jumped at a pretty low level, but basically just barreled towards you, and that was it. The fly bots, which you basically never had to worry about because they would disappear off screen before you would have to attack because they flew overhead. Fireballs that came to your level and attacked, like rolling barrels that kind of came to your level and rolled and attacked, and then the robot that has the lasso, whatever the hell they're called. And those were the most dynamic because they had multiple ways of hitting you. Outside of that, there was just very little variety in the enemies that you saw. Aside from the boss characters, and Rocksteady and Bebop kind of functionally identical. They both charged at you, and they both shot weapons at you. So there wasn't a ton of variety there. One other thing I probably should have put in the good, you can actually deflect projectile attacks with your weapons, which I wish they had done in the NES games. I don't think they ever did. That's brilliant. Make it so that if the enemy's going to try to attack you at a distance, you have the ability to stop an object from hitting you. And I wish they had put those in the NES games. That's a brilliant choice. As far as the ugly, yeah, not a lot of bads there, just a lack of variety and the fact that there was a ton of ghosting when you originally played the game. Oh, and sorry, one more for the bad. Game's kind of short, only 5 levels. It took us like 20 minutes to finish. I get it, it's a Game Boy game. There's no password, there's no battery backup. So you have to be able to finish it in one sitting or you're going to turn it off and you have to play all over again. But they also gave you the level select. So I think they could have added more levels. As far as the ugly, because they decided to make the characters so big and there is a limit to how many pixels they can put on a Game Boy screen at one time, the result is there's not a big viewing distance for enemies that are coming on screen. Again, they mitigated that by making it so that your standard melee attack hits enemies attacking from above. But the simpler solution is zoom out a little. Make it so you can see the enemy a little bit earlier in advance and maybe not always trying to jump directly on top of your head because the arc of their jump leaves them few choices for where they can actually attack you. Just spitballing, I think that would have been an easy choice to fix. As we can tell by looking at this, because when I play Game Boy games on my Retron 5, it defaults to a color scheme if one is available for that particular cart. There wasn't a color scheme available for Fall of the Foot Clan with the Super Game Boy or the Game Boy Color enhancements, so unfortunately, I have to add that as part of the ugly. All you get is the standard gray, or if you were playing on Game Boy, it would have been olive green and 4 shades. So that's kind of a bummer. I would say that it wasn't, and this has been the case with all the TMNT side-scrolling games, not a ton of strategy involved in these games, especially against the bosses. The bosses, it just seems like, wait until they run by, kick them in the back. Wait until they run by, kick them in the back. Or in the case of Shredder and Krang, attack and then walk away immediately so they can't hit you back. Attack and walk away immediately so they can't hit you back. There's not a whole lot else going on there. I'm not saying every game that ever involves side-scrolling brawlers has to have gimmicks, but it is nice occasionally to mix in a boss fight where you could hit a switch and it paralyze them and then you can get one hit in. Otherwise, if you try to hit them, they take no damage and they manage to hit you back. Food. The one time that we went through this game, looking at it today, I did manage to find just enough to keep me alive. I would say it probably would have been nicer to have a little bit more in the environments and maybe even mix in some enhancements for your characters. Like, You know, in the original TMNT that came out on NES, you picked up scrolls that could allow you to throw, like, I don't know, beam attacks, basically, big, wide arcing beam attacks, or ninja stars that you could throw for a period of time. Again, I don't know what they would have been able to do there, but it would have been nice if you had something else to pick up and not just pizza. But small complaint, because the game functionally works the way that it was built already. All right, let's go ahead and give the game a score. We do our score in Randars, 1 to 10. It was very fun. It was very short, and there wasn't a whole lot of meat on the bone. These games were always, at least when they were at their peak, more about having that experience with other players. There aren't any options for doing that in this game, probably because they hadn't even thought about linking Game Boys together to experience a game as a multiplayer experience. And it wouldn't have worked all that well in this case because it's very flat side-scrolling. There isn't like an isometric view where you can move up and down on a plane to hit enemies at different vertical levels, as opposed to just a horizontal moving area that you walk back and forth on. So it's a very limited experience, very short. We got what we wanted out of it today, but I don't think this is one of those ones that has a lot of legs to it. I'm going to give TMNT Fall of the Foot Clan a 7. I think it's an okay experience. It does more right than it does wrong, but it's not exactly a terribly memorable experience, and one that I would not blame people for never having played or wanting to go back and play, because it doesn't stand out from any other side-scrolling TMNT games that we've ever seen on the channel or have ever been released featuring the characters. There's just not enough meat on the bone for this one. It's fine. It functions appropriately, and I don't think it has any cheese or unfair areas. We managed to beat it in one sitting, but there's better options. Go back to any of the NES games. I think there's more meat on the bone for those games than there is in this one. So if you had a Game Boy and you got this, I'm sure you would have your fun with it and be like, all right, I'm good. And then you would probably never pick it up again because there isn't really a whole lot to experience here. But it plays fine, and we managed to beat it. So I can't complain that it wasn't too difficult. And I had fun with it, talking about old TV shows and stuff today. So yeah, 7 Randars. It's fine. It's not great. Nothing special here. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Nub's Handheld Collection. As always, I do appreciate each of you watching, and I'll see you next time.